Welcome to the Tuesday, November 10th, 2020 regular business meeting of the East Bay MUD Board of Directors. Due to COVID-19 and in accordance with the latest Alameda County Health Order and the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspended portions of the Brown Act, this meeting will be conducted remotely. And in compliance with those orders, there is no physical location set for this meeting, and these measures will only apply during the period in which state or local public health officials have imposed or recommended social distancing. This morning, before our closed session, the Planning Committee met and the board attended a long-term infrastructure investment workshop. Also, there was an UMRWA meeting on October 29th. These meetings will be reported out under item 10. All directors, including myself, are participating via Zoom. Director Patterson is excused for the day. Roll call, Madam Secretary, please.
Directors Coleman.
Present.
Katz. I think we lost him. Lenny.
Here.
McIntosh. Mellon.
Present.
President Young.
I am here. Okay, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have no announcements from our closed session. We'll now move on to public comment. If members of the public wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom to signal your desire to speak. Comments on non-agenda items will be heard at the beginning of the meeting. Comments on agenda items will be heard when that item is up for consideration. When prompted, please state your name, affiliation if applicable, and the topic. The secretary will call each speaker in the order received, and each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes to speak. However, I do have the discretion to amend this time based on the number of speakers. The secretary will keep track of time and inform each speaker when their allotted time has concluded. Madam Secretary, do we have any speakers for public comment?
We have John Patricio for public comment. And John, I am going to ask you to unmute your phone. You'll have 3 minutes starting now.
Hello there. Thank you very much. This is John Patricio. Some of you may know that tomorrow is Veterans Day. Matter of fact, today is the Marine Corps birthday, November 10, 1775. The Marine Corps is now 245 years old, which is older than the United States. I'm a district employee working in the Information Systems Department. I'm also a United States Marine combat veteran who served in the ground offensive during Desert Storm in 1992 as an infantry squad leader. I learned a lot of lessons in the Corps, and my biggest takeaway is life is short. So I learned to enjoy every day, hour, minute, and second. And people that know me know that's my creed. The district has always done right for military service members, veterans, and their families, and I am forever grateful. On behalf of the United States military service members and their families, I want to say to the district, thank you. The reason for public comments is a request that the district considers offering a benefit to district members with prior military service. A similar benefit is offered to CalPERS members, and it's called the Military Service Credit. Matter of fact, I provided the secretary a copy of the CalPERS publication for your view if you wanted to. There are many options to this military service credit, but this is it in a nutshell. The benefit will allow members to purchase into the district retirement systems up to their active duty military service. For example, let's say an employee worked at the district for 10 years. When she's eligible and retires, she'll retire with a service credit of 10 years. Let's say prior to the district, she served in the military for 4 years. She's given the opportunity to pay into the retirement system up to the amount of years she served in the military. It's not cheap, so she only pays for 2 years into the retirement system. Now she can retire at the district with a service credit of 12 years. That's 10 years, the amount of actual hours she worked at the district, plus 2 years, the amount she paid into the district retirement system. Now keep in mind, I'm not asking for a handout for our veterans. This is simply a request to provide veterans the option to purchase within the retirement system up to the amount of their active duty service. This is a great country, and we have freedoms beyond the freedoms of many other countries. One reason for this is because of the sacrifices of our sons, daughters, and families in military service. The mother saying goodbye to her son as he leaves for a combat tour, wondering if that's the last time she'll see him. The spouse saying goodbye to their significant other as they leave on an overseas tour for 6 months. The child not understanding why their parent, friend, safety angel is leaving for a long time. Our veterans wrote a blank check to the U.S. government for a period of their lives. Please consider this benefit for our veterans. Hopefully you agree with me that they've earned it. I'd like to leave you with the Marine Corps motto, Semper Fidelis. The short version is Semper Fi. It's Latin for always faithful. Marines say this to each other in passing. Thank you very much for your time, and let me talk about this benefit and Semper Fi.
Gosh, thank you, John. Appreciate your comments, and I think it's a retirement board question and a board question.
Thank you for your service, John.
Yes, thank you. Anyone, and to all of our veterans.
Exactly.
Risha, do we have anyone else for public comment?
No, we don't.
Okie doke. Let's move on then to our consent calendar. Are there any items that board members wish to pull for separate consideration?
I just wanted to thank John also, especially for waiting. I thought that was a particularly poignant comment and message, and I appreciate that you waited for the board meeting to be able to make that.
Great. Marguerite, this is John. I'll move items 1 through 8.
Okay. Is
I'll
there a
second
second? Okay. Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Sorry. Directors Coleman,
Yes.
Katz,
Yes.
Lenny,
Yes.
McIntosh,
Yes.
Mellon,
Yes.
President Young.
Yes. Okay, we'll now move on to discussion or, determination and discussion. I always want to say discussion and determination because it feels like you should discuss before you determine. But and first up on that is the general manager's report. Clifford Chan.
Yeah, we have 3 items. The first is a coronavirus update, and Dave Briggs, Director of Operations and Maintenance, will give you the update.
Good afternoon, President Young and members of the board. And I think I've
Did you break
got
it?
the camera working this time, so hope you can see me and hear me okay. And Risha, am I controlling or are you controlling?
Click into the presentation.
Oh, okay.
And you should be able to move it.
Okay, I think I can use the trackball there. Okay, so good afternoon again. And on slide 2, we're showing the statewide system for progressing counties through the tiers into less, or as you'll find out shortly, unfortunately into more restrictive tiers depending on what the data is showing. And when this system was initiated a couple of months ago, the state designed the 2 metrics on the left to, by and large, demonstrate what's happening at a county-wide level with respect to infectivity of the population for COVID and the rates of positive tests. The new part was initiated by the state about a month ago, and that's the metric on the right, the healthy equity quartile, which in essence is a metric that ensures that no part of the county is lagging more than 5 or 10% behind the county-wide average. And if you are familiar with the demographics of our county and where the infection rate is high and where it is low. And any other metropolitan county, I think, in the state of California, you know that there's a very wide difference in neighborhoods. And this is a perfect, definitely a warranted enhancement of this system because of those differences. So what's happening now in the counties that we by and large operate in, and apologize, this data is from last week, but we have had some new changes. The state typically updates the data and the county status on Tuesdays around midday, and a couple of hours ago, Contra Costa County and Amador County have regressed from orange back up to red, which is a more restrictive tier, joining San Joaquin. San Joaquin is going to stay in red for the time being. 11 counties in the state were brought into more restrictive tiers, and I think more may be following next week. So we know that the statewide numbers have risen. They have risen a little bit in moderate amounts in the Bay Area, but they have changed tiers to 2 of our counties. The other thing I would point out is the metric on the right, the equity metric, the new one, is much larger than the positivity rate. Again, it's only supposed to be, to progress to a lower tier, it's only supposed to be no more than 5 or 10% higher, and it's nowhere near that. And we know that certainly in Alameda County, there's a big difference from place to place. So just taking a step back, so even if these numbers were improving, the rate per 100,000 people and the positivity rate for tests, even if those numbers were improving, which they are not, but even if they were, the equity metric would hold the county back from progressing to a lower tier. So looking at the positivity rates for the Bay Area, they're single digits, low single digits. Just for comparison, Wisconsin is 35%. So a factor of 10 higher. And that's one of the reasons. So the Bay Area numbers, even though they have risen, or in Alameda's County more or less have been stable for a few weeks, but in some cases gone up. Nationally, and certainly parts of the country, they're skyrocketing. It's not surprising that the Bay Area health agencies have contemplated some type of way of quarantining visitors to the Bay Area, although this was all talk last week, and I think the past 7 or 8 days, so there's been so much focus on the election that I haven't heard anything lately. But this makes sense that our numbers are the lowest, probably among the lowest for any metropolitan area in the country. It makes sense to try to isolate us from what's happening outside. How this would be implemented or enforced, I have no idea, but it is a good idea, but we'll have to see what happens in the next coming weeks, or as we approach the holiday season. So district operations, we are stable. We've been doing this for 8 months now. We are finding new ways to get our work done. So that's a very stable situation here. But we want to prepare ourselves for whatever is going to happen next, whether the numbers improve, whether they stay the same, or whether they inch upwards. So we want to be prepared for all scenarios. We know that flu season is pretty much upon us right now. The district sponsored flu vaccinations last month for dozens of employees, and we are definitely going to hit the messaging hard this week with some messages out of the emergency operations team to help reinforce employee behavior outside of work and at work to make sure we can stay as safe as possible. We're contemplating extending the telecommuting activity beyond December 31st, notwithstanding the announcements from the pharmaceutical industry earlier this week. We think that a vaccine is certainly not going to be immediately available for the next few months. So we will be extending the telecommuting. I think that'll be welcomed and a relief for employees who want some certainty. And we hope to provide that, I'm guessing, maybe by the end of the month or maybe by Thanksgiving. Clifford's nodding. Also, most large unified school districts, to some extent, remain closed. Some are doing hybrid learning, some are partially open, some are switching AM, PM, Monday, Wednesday. But by and large, we still have a large number of school children at home and their parents taking care of them. So we know there's a relationship between our employees who are telecommuting and the challenges that they have at home with distance learning. Telecommuting is not a form of district-sponsored childcare, but it does facilitate those that are challenged at home with the kids who are distance learning. We don't anticipate many significant changes to our safety protocols, so it's sort of steady as she goes. We may likely relax or basically open to a restricted sense our district gyms, and that's consistent with county guidelines, essentially 25% occupancy. Unless Alameda County regresses, there's no sign that they're doing that now, so the gyms will likely be open to a limited capacity shortly. We don't have any public access to our district buildings. We don't anticipate any changes there. We have found ways of serving the public, our customers, through innovative ways, connecting with them so they do not have to come into the building. So we feel comfortable keeping that the same. And we've had 6 positives at the district in the last month, 4 or 5 weeks or so. We've had 6 positives. The prior 2 months, we had 0. So we are experiencing an uptick. Hopefully it's an aberration, but we are prepared for a higher caseload. This is a very big burden to the human resources staff. Contact tracing is very laborious, and it's made even more laborious with the additional reporting requirements that have come out of recent state law, and I'm referring to SB 1159, which largely came out of some workers' compensation specifics, but that added a more administrative burden on reporting for any employer, particularly the district. So we will watch this closely and we'll be ready to staff up if needed. Our PPE supply remains very well stocked at 10 to 12 weeks as we roll into the winter. And then finally, just to look at some of our numbers, what you've seen this before. So this is on the y-axis, the left-hand axis. There is the average leave per day, averaged over a pay period. Each one of these blue bars is one pay period going back 7 months or so. And so what this allows us to do is track 2 things. We can see how much leave employees are taking related to COVID to gauge or predict what possible impact there might be on district operations. And as we've been saying for months, there haven't been. But it's also, the second feature is that this allows us to track the impact on employees, which has been really what our focus has been on for months now. And if you look at the magnitude of these bars, you can see that it's between 15 and 20 hours per day. That translates to 2.5 FTEs are not at work for some COVID-related reason on average through the most recent pay periods. Today, so this goes through October 25th, so it's a bit lagging. Today, right now, we have 2 employees home isolating for independent reasons. They were independent cases, and one of those cases also cascaded into a quarantine for 3 additional employees. So there's a total of 5 right now, not at the district for COVID-related reasons today. That's, I think, all I have. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to entertain them.
Any questions from the board? I can't see hands or anything because of the way the Zoom screen is, but no. Okay. All right, next item. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Next item is an update on our racial equity and justice and diversity inclusion master plan project. And again, to get feedback from the board on some of the questions that we asked at the last meeting, Derry Moten, Manager of Employee and Organizational Development, will make the presentation.
Good morning, board members, or good afternoon, sorry. We're going to provide you with an update on where we are in the project. And to begin with, we want to, sorry, I'm trying to take control, there we go. We'll cover the introduction of our new staff member, Jaisha White. We'll provide you updates on both the racial equity and justice and inclusion master plan, review our schedule, give you a synopsis of our next steps, and then we'll answer any questions that you have. So our next slide. Joining us on our team, she is entering her third week this week, is Jaisha White, who's a senior human resource analyst. Jaisha is coming to us from the state of California. She had been working in the California Department of Human Resources, had filled several roles in the area of human resources. There she is. She's on screen there for you all to get to see her there.
Derry, excuse me, your audio is going in and out. If you want to turn up your mic.
Okay. Okay. Is that better?
Go ahead.
Okay, great. And again, Jaisha, again, joining us from the state of California. She has, again, jumped in and begun process on working on a couple of things that you'll hear about, projects that we're moving forward with right now. So our next slide. So with the Racial Equity and Justice Project, we have, again, two projects going forward. In both cases, the task forces on Strategy 1 and Strategy 6, which involve, number one, our internal listening sessions, and number two, are working towards developing strategies for addressing racism from customers. Both task forces made their recommendations to the steering committee on November 3rd. The steering committees provided feedback, and both groups are going to be doing some modifications to their recommendations, and we'll be preparing for implementation of those recommendations coming up very quickly here. Strategy 7 and 8, we're initiating work on those groups. And again, Jaisha will lead the facilitation with those groups now. We've identified all the participants for that group. And again, some of our initial conversations with law enforcement have already begun, but the task force will then be looking at development of formal actions that we want to do in terms of working with law enforcement partners currently. The conversations that have been had with law enforcement agencies have gone relatively smoothly for the most part. And again, we're looking forward to being able to take some of that relationship and some of those conversations and take those into additional groups. Also in Strategy 6, which we're going to talk about in just a moment, there's also part of their recommendation that's going to actually spill over into our work on Strategy 8 particularly. So we'll go to our next slide. So in terms of Strategy 1, where we're focused on listening for all employees, we're working, number one, next step will be doing some training with our affinity group leaders and some of our district advocates with some basic facilitation, influence, and listening skills and validation skills. And this will be so that they can assist in setting up listening sessions with all of our affinity groups. And then also our district advocates will be working towards providing some additional support in terms of how we do outreach specifically to some of our remote areas with some of our internal facilitation. The concept behind this is actually to train these group leaders so that they can assist our current internal facilitators, and in some cases, if necessary, external facilitators, to lead more discussions so that we have a process by which we're cultivating opportunities to listen, also cultivating more trust within the organization by giving employees not just one opportunity, but multiple opportunities to have some broader discussions. Number one, about the Racial Equity and Justice Project on a whole. Number two, overall work climate and work culture items, which will kind of move into kind of the other two parts of this recommendation here. Number two, they'll be conducting active listening sessions with all affinity groups and remote locations, as I mentioned. And then three, we'll be initiating the process for biannual employee engagement survey. As part of the process for the biannual employee engagement survey, we have taken the work that the advocates have previously been working on in cultivation of a engagement survey. We have enhanced that survey now with some additional data that we want to find out in terms of equity and also employee inclusion as well. So the survey will mark as an opportunity as we're completing the listening sessions and getting data back from the internal sessions that we're providing, and the sessions focus groups that the Winters Group is also providing. That data will become some of our benchmark data, and we'll begin the process of looking at and setting up a full engagement survey, most likely in the spring, which will put us on cycle to begin to pull data directly from this as we're building our diversity inclusion strategic plan, and begin looking at where are the opportunities for improvements that we can work on around the district, and to have that on a regular cycle, that we get into a cycle of continuous improvement around overall work culture, which very specifically will address some of the items that we'll be having in our diversity inclusion master plan, and dealing with both any type of racial or systemic issues that we identify, and also dealing with not only that from an internals perspective, but what do we see in terms of customer service as well. So strategy 6, the strategy specifically working on dealing with racism from customers. The team has created new protocols for individuals in the moment having a situation in which they're facing either profiling or blatant racism, how the employees respond, how the employees actually contact the district to get additional support during the case of a situation arising. And then the second part of that was then looking at what are our protocols for investigating those incidents. And this is a sensitive subject that we are going to be doing more research on, because there's multiple layers of this. The layer 1 is what happened to the employee, and how does the employee respond internally. But then secondary thing, and which is much more delicate, is how we want to engage customers if there is a necessity. And part of the dialogue has been, what is the threshold of situation or the significance of the situation in which there needs to be additional outreach to customers. So we're still in the process of really working through what some of the details around that are, and some of the challenges around that are, and what's the best approaches. And again, this particular committee is made up of our manager of customer services and several of our operations managers who have teams that have the highest percentage of situation like this occurring. So we are going to have some very serious dialogue about that, what that should look like, and how best to approach that. And then finally is the post-incident support for employees, in which our conversations are really around how to surround the employee after an incident with the right type of supportive services, in order to make sure that they are both physically capable and mentally and emotionally capable of resuming their work. So in the diversity inclusion master plan, we have continued to work with the Winters Group and their subcontractors on training. And phase 2 of the training has begun, which is racial equity training. They are providing 3 courses on racial equity and what it looks like in the workplace, what it looks like in terms of our both internal and external view of equity. Course 1 is about creating a foundation of racial equity, in which the core team has completed that training. The training went very well. There's a lot of dialogue that was opened up in terms of both personal experience and the impact of equity as it pertains to both race and economics here in our service area. The second course for the core team will occur coming up in December, which is about elevating understanding and identifying opportunities to implement racial equity, which there'll be more dialogue about application of principles that we're gathering. And then the third portion will be developing a racial equity plan, in which the contractor will be working with us to actually begin the foundations of reviewing our data, looking at tangible projects which are priority based on what we're learning and based on what we're looking at in terms of racial equity within the organization, and begin the process of formulating the diversity inclusion strategic plan as we're moving forward. Again, the core team training started on October the 27th and 29th. The next sessions will be held in December. The SMT training will come up next week on November 18th. And again, we'll be kind of moving forward with the process of ensuring that we're on the same page in terms of what we're looking at and what are our best opportunities for development of the diversity inclusion plan. So the next is our SB 1343 training, which is the state required harassment prevention training. Our goals with this training is to modify our current approach to training. We have been using contract vendors in both an electronic format and webinar format have been focused specifically on legal compliance and looking at ways to make sure that employees understand what our protected classes are, what are the best methods for best and required methods for reporting, and what are methods for individuals to identify some type of harassment when they see it. But we want to actually move beyond that legal compliance and start to use this training opportunity from the state to actually begin to move into pressing training into the organization to focus on building a culture of inclusion and belonging. So we will cover the required elements of the state, but we will cover them in a context of looking at this and not just what we want to avoid, but really what does the district want to achieve in terms of creating an environment where all employees feel included, where the culture of the organization is clear, that is based on our district values that have been identified, and that all employees recognize that we want to have an organization where everyone fits and everyone belongs. So we want to integrate the racial equity training that we're receiving, some of our core training, which we have for all of our leaders on emotional intelligence and our district values, and weave an approach toward building inclusive environments and making sure that people understand where are the lines, and when people cross the lines, well, what's the best way to actually steer away from even getting to those points of offense. But if something does happen, that we have the right mechanisms and tools for people to understand exactly how to report, how to investigate, and how to deal with harassment if it happens. So our project schedule, we're continuing to move forward. Phase 1 and phase 2, we are really moving forward with. We're making some good progress in terms of our recommendations from employees, and we'll get to the point where we're getting ready to vet those so we can roll out with the implementation. Our strategy 7 and 8 will begin, and again, Jaisha will be leading the facilitation of those groups as we get ready to move forward. The phase 3 items in terms of our strategies are items that we're starting to frame so that as we're talking to the Winters Group and looking at getting towards the building of the diversity inclusion master plan, the projects that they are interested in having our core teams work on, that these 4 strategies, strategy 2, 3, 4, and 5, will be part of those efforts as we move forward. So these will be integrated into the diversity inclusion master planning work that we're doing right now. And then the core team training and this SMT training will continue throughout February. So our next steps, again, implementation of the recommendations for strategy 1 and 6 task forces, developing our strategies for task forces 7 and 8, maintaining staff communication on progress, and building the tools for internal discussion, which include our SB 1343 training and some additional training materials that we're starting to work at and develop. And then we'll be continuing phase 2 with training for the core team and the SMT members. So last time we were with you, we provided you a document which was the global diversity and inclusion benchmarks categories and the diversity and inclusion master plan outcomes list. And we wanted to open the door for any feedback after you all have after reviewing those documents. Primarily, we're looking for any key points that you all feel like we need to develop, or areas that you see that there needs to be some emphasis placed within that. And we'll kind of open the floor for that at this point.
First of all, welcome, Jaisha. So do I don't see anybody attempting to come off of mute or raising their hand. I really like the concept of making the AB 1343 training something more than a box to check, which is what I think all of those trainings, I mean, for all of us, I looked at my ethics training before the end of the year. I'm like, okay, so I think that's, making it, taking the opportunity to make it live and breathe, I think is, and go beyond is really good. On the please don't side. DIMP, really? Let's not, can we just call it? I mean, it doesn't take that much more to like copy and paste the words out. I don't know.
We will strike that.
Okay. Frank?
So, this is not an advertisement for me, Gary. In fact, I'm willing to share what I use as materials in the 1843 training. Long before it was required to include the bullying aspect, I've been including that because my identification on bullying and harassment is that they are absolute parallel tracks. It's all about domination. Sexual harassment isn't about sex. Bullying isn't about anything other than domination. And I have, frankly, not because I make a buck or two off it, full disclosure, but I have been opposed to these canned programs. They don't accomplish a doggone thing. And when I was an employee way back when we were still hand pumping the water through the pipes, we had actual people coming and talking to us. And I feel that any kind of canned program takes away that interaction that really accomplishes telling the story. Yeah, the videos are great. The videos actually work better if you show a video and then you have a discussion over the video. But just a cold video, it's like, oh, well, okay, now I'm looking at my clock here, and if I stretch this out the right amount of time, I can get my 2 hours in, and then I can click this thing off. So I want to encourage going back to the old days, because some of the old days actually were a pretty good idea. So use videos for examples when it's hard to describe. But, and like I said, I'd be happy to send you my current PowerPoints that I use when I'm doing a discussion. But I'm interfacing. And sometimes you get some pretty difficult discussions in those interfacings, particularly when I'm doing training out in the, shall I just simply say the valley areas. You get out Stockton, Modesto way, and they have an entirely different attitude out there. Some places you actually see the state of Jefferson flags. So, please look to incorporating more personal interaction. And Jaisha, it's really nice to see that, Gary's got his team kind of filled in. So you got some work ahead of you, and I'm hoping you'll hit the ground running. That's my thoughts, Jerry, and I'll make a point of sending you what I do for one of my clients as the training.
Thank you.
One more thought. One of the things I started to doing on the training is, it's 2 hours for supervisors, 1 hour for the hourly employees. I use the same program, and I have a point break. But I have the supervisors and the employees sitting in together. And now that's the way I remember we used to do it. I'm sure that that's part of what you would like to see accomplished, but having the supervisors and the employees together, then the employees know what it is that the supervisors are being taught. And the supervisors know what it is that's being hustled on the employees. And guess what? It makes for an entirely different atmosphere. Them's my thoughts.
Good points. Thank you.
Barry?
Yes.
Hi. I'm sure I have something wonderfully fabulous to say, but I am so tired from today's meeting. I don't have it in me. So You have to
Yeah.
give me a pass today.
Yeah, I think Derry, I think we actually have some meeting fatigue happening amongst us. It's been a long and pretty challenging day in a lot of respects. So I would encourage fellow board members to pen a note, send an email, pick up the phone, give Derry your thoughts. Okay, next up, I think we have one more item on determination. Yes?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Derry. The last is just a general manager's report. It's attached to your board packet, so I can answer any questions you may have.
And
Marguerite,
again, I
this is
think
John.
you're pretty, oh, go ahead, John. I was gonna
I'll be
say you're
quick.
probably off the hook.
I'll be very quick. First, I want to give kudos to staff on the response in the PSPS events with PG&E. I think they did a phenomenal job this year. So thank you to everybody who was involved with that in the field. My question was on the salmon. I think it was on page 3 of your report. It doesn't say what the number of returns are. I know it's less than last year, but how much less is it than last year, and is anticipated to be substantially less than the previous years?
Yeah, Mike Tognley is coming up. He can give you the latest numbers.
Yes, I can just say that the latest number as of the end of October was about 1,300 salmon returning. So what we're seeing is a relatively late run this year. Normally we'd have quite a bit more than that. So we're hoping that we'll see those fish come up later.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Are we doing any more pulses, Mike, or to try to bring them up?
The
No.
district has done 4 pulses out of Comanche. We're now doing the operational pulses in coordination with Woodbridge Irrigation District through the changes that they make in their lake elevations.
Okay. All right. Seeing no other hands. Moving on to reports and director comments. Committee reports, the Sustainability and Energy Committee and the Finance and Administration Committees met on the 27th, and those meetings were included in the agenda packet. And today we will get brief reports from the Planning Committee and from the UMRWA meeting, and then I'll provide a brief report on this morning's infrastructure workshop. Doug?
All right, the Planning Committee met this morning. We had one report. It was an update on the Urban Water Management Plan and the Drought Management Plan. Some changes that were gone over, especially about the Drought Management Plan. Some lessons learned from the 2014-2016 adjustments made in terms particularly of when we would begin a request or trigger a letter to the Central Valley Project to get our water allocation, because allocation seemed to disappear last time a lot faster. And one of the lessons were to get the water earlier, or at least put in for it earlier than later. And I think that was kind of some of the key stuff.
Thank you. And for finance and administration, oh, I'm sorry, wait. John, could you give a brief report on UMRWA?
Yeah, we ended up, our first meeting was supposed to be October 23rd. We didn't have a quorum, so it got moved to October 29th. We dealt with forestry projects, Prop 1 grant awards, the Youth Watershed Stewardship Program, and consensus group. We did have, and we met and concluded. How's that for brevity?
That was good and informative. So this morning, which seems like a really long time ago, we had a very comprehensive workshop on our long-term infrastructure investments, very specifically focused on the wastewater master plan process that Eileen White and her team have really leaned into and put together a very comprehensive presentation on the many both complementary and competing drivers for our work to address wastewater coming into our plant and how to recover as much as we can to create opportunities for making energy out of our biogas, dealing with the biosolids that result with emerging contaminants, costs, and the fact that we have, we're at the foot of the bay, so we're, really thinking about how to address and mitigate sea level rise, and then finally on our impact on the bay in terms of nutrient outflows and doing the necessary, contributing to the necessary science to better understand how to keep the bay healthy as we continue to deal with the waste from our customers and our operations. And that is, I will conclude with that. We will be actually taking up the implications of that master plan as well as our water supply master plan and capital improvements program as part of our budget workshop in January. For those that don't know about our special meetings and workshops, they are quite informative and encourage people to tune in and look up the workshop from this morning if they're interested in that. Okay. Moving on from there, please submit any items for future consideration to the general manager. Item 12, director comments. Any director comments? I have one that I will make after Frank. Go ahead.
First of all, everybody that voted, thank you so very much. It was so important. And the folks that helped make our voting possible, we're going to be remembering tomorrow, and that's our veterans.
We actually have a whole thing coming up next about Veterans Day. So exactly. Thank you. I just want to let folks know that I will be, I know we've all been participating remotely the last whatever months it's been. I will be participating very remotely over the next 2 meetings. I will be zooming in from Chile, where I will be meeting my granddaughter. I'm very excited. I leave on Friday. So I'll be gone until the day before our January meeting. So I'll be zooming in for 2 meetings. Any other director comments? Okay, well then our final item, as Frank hinted at, is that we will adjourn in recognition of Veterans Day, which is being observed tomorrow, November 11th. The district is recognizing and honoring our employees and board members who have served in the U.S. military. And today we're closing our meeting by acknowledging all those district employees and board members who wish to be recognized for their military service. Their names will appear on screen before our meeting is adjourned. The next regular meeting of the board will be held on Tuesday, November 24th, 2020 at 1:15. You want to roll the tape, as they say.
Give us one moment. We're bringing up the slides. Go bring up.
Okay.
Do the share.
Can we make that bigger at all? And with that, our meeting is adjourned. Goodbye, everyone.